My name is Charlotte, and I'm 35 years old. I remember the exact moment I understood what I was to my parents, not a daughter, but an inconvenience they had never quite figured out what to do with. I was 9 years old, sitting at the top of the stairs on Christmas morning, listening to the laughter coming from the living room below. My brother Trevor was unwrapping gifts. My sister Nadine was shrieking with delight over some toy she had begged for since October. And I was upstairs, still in my pajamas, waiting for someone to call my name. No one did. My mother eventually looked up the staircase around noon, saw me sitting there, and said, "Oh, Charlotte, come eat something." That was it. No gift. No apology. No explanation. Just, "Come eat something," as if I were a stray cat they had forgotten to feed. That became the pattern of my childhood. Trevor was the golden son, athletic, charming, the kind of boy who made my father stand taller just by walking into a room. Nadine was the baby, the favorite daughter, the one my mother dressed in matching outfits and took to ballet recitals and photographed constantly. I existed somewhere between them like a footnote in a book no one was reading. My birthdays were forgotten or acknowledged 2 days late with a gas station card and a mumbled sorry. My school achievements went unnoticed. My pain went unaddressed. When I cried, I was told I was too sensitive. When I withdrew, no one noticed I had gone quiet. I learned early to need nothing from them, because needing something from them only led to disappointment, so heavy it sat in your chest like wet concrete. At 19, I left for college on a partial scholarship and 2 part-time jobs. I told my parents I was leaving on a Sunday evening. My father nodded without looking up from the television. My mother said, "Don't forget to call." I didn't call. Not for a long time. And they didn't call either, which told me everything I had always suspected but never had confirmed in such clean, quiet terms. The years that followed were hard in ways I don't have the words to fully describe. I worked and studied and scraped and built something from nothing, which is the only foundation that ever truly holds. I got my degree in finance. I moved into a studio apartment the size of a generous closet. I ate cheap meals and wore secondhand clothes and told myself that the discomfort was temporary and the effort was permanent. I climbed slowly, then quickly, then with a kind of momentum that surprised even me. By 28, I was managing accounts for a regional investment firm. By 31, I had started a small financial consulting business of my own. By 33, I had more money than my parents had earned in their entire lives combined. I did not contact them during any of this. I had made a quiet peace with the distance. I had built friendships that felt like family, a life that felt like mine, and a version of myself I was genuinely proud of. I was not bitter. I was not plotting. I was simply living, fully and freely, without them. Then I bought the house. The Hargrove Estate, the locals called it, the largest private residence in the entire county, a Victorian mansion at the edge of town that had sat empty for 3 years after the original owner passed. 12 bedrooms, wraparound porches, original hardwood floors, a property that stretched across 4 acres of land. It made the local newspaper. It made the regional news. And somehow, inevitably, it made its way back to my parents. My mother called on a Tuesday afternoon. I almost didn't answer. When I did, her voice was warm in a way I had never heard directed at me, soft and maternal, and full of a tenderness she had never once extended to me as a child. She said she had seen the news. She said she was so proud. She said she hoped we could spend Christmas together this year, the whole family, at my beautiful new home. I was quiet for a moment. Then I said yes. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had been preparing for this moment for weeks. Because I had learned something growing up in that house. I had learned the difference between people who love you and people who love what you can give them. And I had decided, calmly and with great clarity, that it was finally time my parents learned that difference too. I had already made several phone calls of my own. And the mansion wasn't just waiting for my family that Christmas Eve. It was waiting for other guests as well. Christmas Eve arrived cold and clear, the kind of night that makes everything look deceptively beautiful. Frost on the windows, stars sharp against a black sky, the old Hargrove estate lit up from the outside like something out of a magazine. I had arranged the exterior lights deliberately, making the mansion glow warm and golden from the street, because I needed my parents to see exactly what they had ignored all those years. I needed them to feel the full weight of what walking away from a child costs, and I needed that lesson delivered in a setting they could never forget. I had called the local police department 2 weeks earlier and spoken with Detective Ray Howell, a patient and methodical man who listened to everything I told him without interrupting once. I explained that I had reason to believe certain individuals would attempt to enter my property using fraudulent ownership documents my brother Trevor had been quietly assembling with the help of a notary he knew through his construction business. Trevor had always been resourceful in the wrong directions. He had learned from my parents that the world owed him comfort, and when comfort didn't arrive on its own, he manufactured shortcuts to take it. He had apparently decided, after seeing the news coverage of my purchase, that a 12-bedroom Victorian mansion was exactly the kind of shortcut he deserved. Detective Howell told me to let it play out. He said they would be there. I had also called a journalist named Sandra Voss, who worked for the regional paper that had originally covered my purchase. Sandra was sharp and unhurried, and the kind of reporter who understood that the best stories were the ones that arrived fully formed, requiring very little embellishment. I told her what I expected to happen. She said she would bring a photographer. On Christmas Eve, I parked my car 3 streets away and entered the mansion through the back. The interior was completely dark. Detective Howell and 2 officers were already inside, positioned quietly near the front entrance. Sandra and her photographer were stationed in the dining room, away from the windows. I stood in the hallway near the staircase, in the dark, and I waited. They came at 9:47 in the evening. I heard the van before I saw it. My father's old cargo van, the one he used for weekend hauling jobs, pulling up the gravel drive with the headlights off as if that made any difference. 4 doors opened. My mother, my father, Trevor, and a man I didn't recognize who was carrying a locksmith bag. They stood outside for a moment, and I could hear my mother's voice through the old walls, low and instructional, telling someone to hurry up. My father said something about the locks. Trevor said he had the papers ready. They didn't knock. They went straight for the lock, the way people do when they have already decided that a place belongs to them and the formality of entry is just an obstacle. It took the locksmith less than 4 minutes. The front door swung open. They stepped inside. Detective Howell turned on the lights. The sound my mother made was something I had never heard from her before, a short, strangled noise that was equal parts shock and shame. My father froze completely, one hand still on the doorframe. Trevor dropped the folder of documents he had been carrying, and papers scattered across the original hardwood floor I had refinished at considerable expense. The locksmith said nothing and looked only at the exit. Detective Howell identified himself calmly and asked Trevor to step forward. Trevor looked at my father. My father looked at the floor. My mother looked around the room with wild, searching eyes until they landed on me, standing at the base of the staircase in the dark hallway, watching all of it. She said my name. Just my name, the way she had said it on that staircase when I was 9 years old, Charlotte, as if it were a complete sentence, as if it were sufficient. I had imagined this moment many times. I had imagined saying something devastating, something precise and unforgettable. But standing there in my own home, in the house I had purchased with money I had earned without a single hand extended to help me, I found that I didn't need to say anything at all. The room said everything. Sandra's photographer said everything. The scattered fake documents on my floor said everything. Trevor was charged that night with attempted fraud and trespassing. My parents were escorted off the property without charges, but with the full understanding that returning without my explicit invitation would change that quickly. The story ran in the paper 3 days after Christmas with a headline that was more restrained than the truth deserved. I spent Christmas morning alone in the mansion, in a big chair by the window, with coffee and silence and the particular peace that comes from knowing that you never needed them, not even once, and that you proved it completely. That was the only gift I had ever wanted from them. And I finally gave it to myself. If this story moved you the way it moved me to live it, please subscribe to Core Revenge Tales. There are more stories like this one waiting for you. Real, raw, and worth every minute. Hit that subscribe button and stay with us.